Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a collection of interconnected stories. Think of them like snapshots, maybe from a much larger picture. And our goal is to really dig into some of the unspoken realities of modern work. We've gathered, personal accounts, observations from people across different industries, different
Right.
roles.
And together, they paint this compelling picture, sometimes unsettling, actually, about what's really happening out there in the professional world.
Exactly. It's not the highlight reel, is it?
Not at all. Forget the corporate jargon. What we've got here are these raw, kind of unfiltered moments. They expose the hidden struggles, the frustrations that, honestly, probably a lot of us face day to day.
Yeah.
It's about looking past that polished surface,
Yeah.
understanding the real currents underneath.
Okay, so to give you a sense of who we'll be talking about, let's just quickly sketch out a few scenes. First, imagine Camille. She's a senior marketing associate, feeling really undervalued, especially seeing a less experienced colleague just sort of get ahead.
Right. And then there's Zane. He's a freelance UI/UX designer,
Yeah.
and he's navigating that classic freelance roller coaster,
Sure.
right? Inconsistent work, financial pressure.
That constant tightrope walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also meet Aya, a clinical data analyst. She got a promotion, which sounds great, but it's brought this wave of anxiety and unexpected friction in her personal life, too.
And that's really just scratching the surface. We also encounter Marissa. She's a compliance analyst, feels totally invisible. So much so, she's actually tracking every time her work gets overlooked.
Wow.
Yeah. Then there's Josh, IT onboarding. He's feeling more and more isolated, kind of dreaming about living alone. Samira, she's at a climate startup. Partnerships associate feeling like her ideas just vanish into thin air.
Ignored.
Totally. Hannah, in marketing ops, feels unseen but also completely overloaded. Alex, data infrastructure, describes himself as feeling like a logic vending machine, dealing with these subtle negative interactions constantly,
That's a striking image.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And finally, Nadine, culture and belonging strategist. She's so disillusioned, she's actually started a secret podcast just to cope.
A secret podcast. Okay. So what's really fascinating here is how these, seemingly quite different experiences, they all weave together. There are these powerful, really relatable themes running through them. We're going to explore that feeling, that pervasive feeling of being unseen, questioning your own worth.
Right. And how work just blurs into personal life more and more.
Yeah, that blurring and just the tricky dynamics, the complexities of the modern workplace. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that feeling of being unseen, undervalued. That seems huge.
It really does. It feels like a central thread. Take Camille again. She's putting in the hours, doing the work, refining things.
Right.
And then she sees Nick, this less experienced colleague, suddenly named strategic lead on her project
Her project.
and earning more.
Yeah.
And the detail about him needing her help with, like, basic PowerPoint,
Oh, that just adds insult to injury, doesn't it?
it really highlights the frustration, the unfairness of it all.
It's infuriating. And her reaction, it says so much, doesn't it? Pretending to be sick just to get a moment alone to process it. Checking that muted Slack thread, sending that single, almost passive-aggressive wave emoji. It's this performance, right? Pretending everything's fine when it's clearly not.
Absolutely. And then she starts Googling things like corporate gaslighting.
Which is that awful feeling where you start doubting your own reality because of how work spins things, yeah.
Exactly. And she bookmarks articles about invisible work being stolen. It just shows the internal battle she's fighting.
Yeah. And Marissa's story echoes this too, but maybe in a different way. It's less one big event, more like death by 1,000 cuts.
Right, that constant drip, drip, drip. Her name always misspelled. The director calling women kiddo. Her review getting pushed back again and again by this guy, Darren. These little things, they just build up.
They really do. And how she copes. It's kind of heartbreaking, but also really telling. That spreadsheet, paper trail your pain.
Documenting every time someone takes credit. It's methodical.
And the physical cost, too. Tracking her lack of sleep, her high resting heart rate. It's like her body's literally keeping score of the disrespect.
It is. And what's interesting is how people internalize this differently. Look at Samira. Her boss takes full credit for her presentation, the one everyone called visionary.
Her work.
Her work. And her therapist calls it identity erosion. Basically, when your contributions are constantly ignored or claimed by others, it starts chipping away at who you feel you are professionally, maybe even personally.
That makes sense. And Hannah being called the glue. We all know what that usually means, right?
The underappreciated engine room.
Exactly. And then getting her own work back with that note. Make it more you. What does that even mean?
It's so vague. It suggests they don't even really see her contributions, just want some undefined quality. And that quiet comment she makes to the new hire, you don't have to smile so much.
Yeah.
It hints at this awareness of the performance needed, especially maybe for women, to be seen or just to survive.
And we shouldn't forget Alex, feeling like a vending machine for logic. That's rough.
It is. The passive-aggressive comments on JRA tickets, the microaggressions he's actually documenting, time-stamped in a Notion doc.
Wow. He's really keeping track.
Yeah, it shows an environment where even just being competent can be met with this subtle hostility, this sort of dehumanizing feeling. It's not always overt conflict.
No, it's the slow erosion.
Exactly. The subtle chipping away at your professional self-worth. So yeah, this whole theme, being unseen, isn't just about missing out on a promotion. It actively damages your sense of self, your well-being.
It really does. Which I think leads us pretty naturally into the next big point.
Yeah.
How work and personal life are just bleeding into each other, that struggle to find any kind of refuge.
Yeah, this is where it gets really revealing.
Yeah.
Because these stories show work isn't just a thing people do anymore. It's tangled up with who they are and even where they try to find peace. Camille, using her very last PTO hour
Just to sit in her car.
and check Slack. It's stark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even on her own time, work has this hold.
There's no real off switch. And Zane's story adds another layer, that perfect-looking Instagram life.
Right. Carefully curated but private.
Contrasted with, what was it, over $9,000 in Klarna bet?
Yeah, $9,400
Yeah.
from buying ergonomic chairs, online courses, all stuff meant to boost his career.
So he's projecting success while secretly drowning in work-related debt and anxiety.
Exactly. And that fantasy he has
Yeah.
about just delivering printer ink, being anonymous, untraceable.
It speaks volumes, a desire for complete escape from the pressure.
Absolutely. In Aya's situation, it really drives home how work stress can poison your personal space, your home. The fight with her neighbor Jasmine escalating right after her promotion. Her therapist talking about covert envy. Aya logging the noise, sleeping with a white noise machine. It shows how work anxieties can just spill over and wreck your living environment.
That question they pose, what happens when your home stops feeling like a refuge? It's chilling.
It really is. And the other question, too. What if you are the only one in the group chat who still cares about rent day?
Oof.
Yeah. Thinking about Josh and his roommate Eli, Eli loses his job, and their whole relationship deteriorates, communicating through passive-aggressive Venmo emojis.
It's sadly relatable for some, I imagine. It shows how job instability and money worries can just fracture basic living situations.
And Josh admitting he wants to live alone, but he's also scared of the silence. That's poignant.
It suggests this deep loneliness may be masked by the constant, even tense presence of someone else.
Yeah.
So these examples, they just really highlight how modern work can break down those essential boundaries we need. Constant connection, financial stress tied to your career, the emotional drain. It leaves people feeling like there's nowhere to truly switch off.
Nowhere to recharge. If work takes over everything, where is that refuge?
Exactly. Which brings us, I think, to the final area we wanted to explore. This whole performance of well-being, the pretending, and the unspoken truths bubbling underneath.
Right. This is where the cracks in that polished facade really start to show. We see Camille trying to report Nick anonymously.
And the form glitches. Yeah. It's almost symbolic, isn't it? Like the system itself is broken or resistant to addressing these things. And Sasha's quiet quitting.
That's Slack status. Taking up space elsewhere.
It's not loud, but it's a definite withdrawal. A silent rebellion against a system that isn't working for her.
And Zane, selling his nice desk stuff to pay off debt, starting to bike at night. These are quiet, almost desperate coping mechanisms, aren't they?
Definitely. Actions taken in the face of this mounting pressure, and Aya just moving out, no notice, just leaving an empty space, that speaks volumes about needing to escape, sever ties completely.
It's a drastic move, fueled by needing to get away from toxicity both at work and home, it seems.
And Camille's Slack message that just hangs there. Can someone please tell me what we're all pretending not to feel?
Followed by that single eyes emoji.
It's such a powerful moment. Like everyone knows, everyone feels something, but no one wants to, or maybe feels they can't. Say it out loud.
There's this collective awareness, but also this palpable fear of breaking the silence. And then you have Marissa's side project, Ghost Work Studio, designing fake client logos.
It's her escape, right? A fantasy where she is seen, where her work matters, a way to reclaim some agency, even if it's just imagined.
Exactly. And Samira interviewing for that DEI role she doesn't even believe in just for leverage?
Using the system against itself in a way.
Sort of. And then finding solace or maybe just shared anger in that Discord group for women in tech, talking about unions burning it all down. It shows this growing disillusionment, this search for collective power, or at least shared understanding.
And Nadine's secret podcast. I almost said this at work.
Perfect title.
It really is. It's her outlet for everything she can't say on the clock, all those frustrations.
It becomes essential. Then you see Hannah just disappearing from meetings, no announcement, Alex taking unpaid leave, deleting Slack entirely.
Opting out, pulling the plug.
They're acts of withdrawal, disconnecting from a system that feels crushing. And Nadine finally publishing her podcast, anonymously, of course.
Yeah.
That episode title, Things You Only Say in the Printer Room.
So relatable.
And the response she gets, I thought I was the only one who felt like this. It just nails the universality of these hidden feelings.
Yeah. Those questions woven through all these stories, they really hit hard, don't they?
You really do.
What if your job became the safest part of your life, even if it's killing you?
Oof.
What would you risk just to matter at work? Have you ever pretended to be fine just to keep the peace? Is it still imposter syndrome if the system wants you to doubt yourself?
That's a powerful one.
What happens when every friendship you built at work was just trauma bonding with a deadline? What's the cost of pretending you're okay in an economy that never was?
Well,
What would you risk just to feel seen in the place that erases you? Have you ever stayed in a job just because the alternative felt like failure? What if burnout isn't exhaustion, but grief? Grief that your work became who you are, and now you hate both.
deep.
And that last one. Who are you when no one needs anything from you? They just make you stop and think about the immense pressure, the real impact.
They absolutely do. And Marissa's final Slack status. I'm not okay, and I'm still working anyway.
Brutally honest.
And that single hate reaction, followed by just the letter M, it's so ambiguous. A tiny flicker of acknowledgement maybe, but ultimately it kind of reinforces her feeling of being reduced, just an initial in the machine.
Yeah. And that closing image, the jammed printer in the messy break room, that familiar spike of rage, but then the easier choice, silence. And the final thought, a ghost.
It's such a potent metaphor, isn't it? Being there but not seen.
Yeah.
Contributing but not acknowledged. Just
Yeah.
vanished within the works.
Absolutely. These stories, seen together like this, they offer this really stark, often quite moving glimpse into the hidden emotional world of modern work.
They shine a light on that pervasive feeling of being invisible, the insidious nature of burnout, and that constant struggle to juggle our well-being with what our jobs demand from us.
So as you go about your own work life, maybe take a second to think about those small moments, the unspoken frustrations, the silent nods, the reactions that say more than words ever could. What might all those little things, added up, reveal about the bigger picture of work today? What are those printer room thoughts that maybe you're holding on to? Definitely something to mull over. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Have you ever bought something, maybe, a small treat, or perhaps something bigger and felt a little flicker of? Well, something else along with it. Not just like the satisfaction of having the item, but almost a feeling that you've filled a different kind of need.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everyone, to The Deep Dive. We're the place where we take a close look at the things that really shape our lives.
That's right.
And today, we're exploring a collection of really powerful personal stories. They reveal these intricate ways our financial lives, intersect with our deepest emotions.
And the pressures of the world around us, too.
Exactly.
So you've carved out this time with us, and we really appreciate that. Our goal here isn't to just, dump a load of information on you.
Yeah.
We want to really dig into the core of these experiences, pull out those insights, those aha moments, you could say,
Yeah.
to help us understand why we sometimes make the financial decisions we do. We're talking about those choices that seem, driven by a longing for something deeper than just the transaction. Like validation, maybe? Or a sense of security?
Or even feeling loved,
Yeah.
in a world that feels pretty shaky sometimes.
And through these stories, we're starting to see how societal norms and our own, individual vulnerabilities can have a much stronger pull on our wallets than we might consciously realize. So we're going to unpack some of these situations, see what they reveal about those sort of hidden drivers behind our spending.
Okay, let's get straight to it. Our first set of stories, they really center around this idea, calling it the price of being chosen.
Okay.
So with Maya. Now, she connected with someone online, right? And He presented this very successful image. And for Maya, who she openly admitted wanting to be admired, this felt like finally being truly seen, like stepping into a life she'd only ever seen on a screen before.
That's powerful. And what's striking about Maya's experience is how quickly that initial feeling, that validation, became tied up with money.
Yeah. You mentioned dinners at fancy places, clothes bought on installment plans. These weren't just dates, were they? They seemed to represent like an investment.
An investment in a shared future, yeah. That feeling got stronger when her own money got tight for a bit, and he stepped in, covered the cost.
Ah, okay. So that created a dynamic.
It really did, where contributing financially felt linked to the relationship moving forward.
Right, and that first gesture, him covering things,
Yeah.
it kind of opened a door, didn't it?
Exactly. Because then he started asking for small amounts, always with a good reason, A payment delay, a cash flow thing.
Plausible deniability.
Totally. Maya even remembers him saying she was investing in the version of us that wins.
Wow.
Over just 4 months, she sent him nearly $8,000.
8,000.
Yeah, different platforms. Wiped out her savings, overdraft fees. She even put off paying for therapy copays. It really makes you think, how the promise of moving up socially, even through a partner, can just overshadow common sense with money, especially if you feel like you're stuck where you are.
It really does. Maya's story just brings up that huge question.
Yeah.
What is the cost of feeling chosen when you've always felt insecure? It pushes us to look at those underlying vulnerabilities, right? The ones that can make us more susceptible to these kinds of dynamics where, well, the desire for connection gets leveraged financially.
It certainly does. Okay, then there's Terrence. For him, his credit score, that was a huge point of pride.
Yeah, like a symbol of control.
Exactly. Responsibility. But then his mother got diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer.
Oh, tough.
And that sense of control just vanished, hit by this wave of expenses he never saw coming.
The sheer financial weight of a serious illness. It's something so many people face, unfortunately. Karen's taking unpaid leave to care for her, charging her preferred meds to his Amex because Medicaid didn't fully cover them. It just shows the lengths we go to for family in a crisis. Maxing out a $12,000 credit card in 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
And using buy now, pay later for just everyday stuff. That paints a very clear picture of the pressure.
And the emotional toll was just immense. Even after his mother passed, he was left with the debt, the grief, a pile of unopened bills.
And telling no one.
Telling no one, not even his partner. He felt he had to be the man, carry it all silently. Terrence's story really highlights that conflict, doesn't it? Between how society expects men to be stoic and the reality of, emotional and financial vulnerability when you're caring for someone really sick.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how often those ingrained ideas stop people from getting help they desperately need.
Precisely. That pressure to project strength,
Right.
to handle it all alone.
It leads to isolation, right?
And serious financial problems. Terrence's story just underlines how unexpected life stuff can completely destabilize even like the most carefully managed finances.
And how hard it is to ask for help when you feel you have to keep up that image of being self-sufficient.
Definitely.
Okay, let's turn to Elena. She's a content manager. She decided to use OnlyFans
Right.
as a way to aggressively pay down her student loan debt. Her initial reason, purely practical, a temporary thing, get the balance down.
What's fascinating about Elena's experience, though, is that unexpected emotional layer that sort of crept in.
Yeah.
The money started to mean something different. It began to feel like affirmation,
Yeah.
maybe even affection.
Interesting.
Those direct messages offering help with bills, people sending large sums just for her being online. It created this sense of being valued, maybe even loved in a way she hadn't felt before. You could almost say the money inadvertently tapped into this deep need she had for validation,
Right.
blurring the lines between, a transaction and an emotional connection.
It really shows that complex tension, doesn't it? The practical goal clashes with this unexpected emotional thing.
Right.
And then the very real social fallout when her family found out about her work.
Oh, well, yeah.
It makes you think about the different versions of ourselves we sometimes feel we have to show the world. And it leads to that big question. How many versions of yourself have you felt you have to present just to make it through the month?
Elena's journey just shows how easily our ideas of worth and value can get distorted when money and online interaction get tangled up. Sure, there was short-term financial relief, but it came with, significant emotional costs.
Yeah.
And it raises big questions about the actual price of validation online these days.
So what we see across Maya, Terrence, and Elena, it's significant financial losses, sure, but also real emotional pain.
Yeah.
Maya grieving the lost hope of that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
Terrence dealing with grief and debt, Elena starting that hard process of seeing her worth isn't tied to clicks or cash. It really brings to mind that quote from Publius Syrus, "Debt is the slavery of the free."
That hits hard.
Yeah,
And it leads us straight to those really deep questions, doesn't it?
yeah,
Like, how much do we end up owing just for pretending we're okay? Where did we even learn that love or acceptance has a price tag?
right.
And if you could just wipe the slate clean on those past financial choices driven by emotion, would you?
Heavy questions. But they really encourage us to look underneath,
Yeah.
at the motivations shaping how we handle our money.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The next theme we noticed was about rooms you can't afford to leave.
Right. We'll start with Janelle. She got a remote tech job, felt this strong pull to create an image of success online.
Pretty common feeling these days.
Very. So she staged this expensive-looking apartment in Los Feliz, temporary decor, pricey furniture on payment plans, all to mask this deep loneliness she felt.
Janelle's story really speaks volumes about that pressure, doesn't it? To project a certain lifestyle, especially on social media.
Totally.
The huge gap between her curated online life and the reality living paycheck to paycheck, spending over half her income on rent. It's revealing.
Yeah.
And then the layoffs happened. Suddenly, the fragility of that whole constructed image just became painfully obvious.
It makes you wonder, when did we start thinking financial trouble could just be curated into content, hidden?
That's a great question. Maxing out credit cards just to look normal while waiting for unemployment, borrowing from friends. It paints a picture of someone just desperately trying to keep up appearances.
And it leads to that other question. How many people do you follow online who might be secretly falling apart behind a filter?
That question about what's hidden behind the polished online facade is so relevant now.
Yeah.
Janelle basically trying to buy her way out of loneliness. It really highlights the dangers of confusing stuff and online likes with real connection and well-being.
Then there's Cameron. He initially did really well with crypto investments.
Ah, the crypto roller coaster.
Exactly. But then he had significant losses. But despite this downturn, he kept up this pretense of being financially stable in his relationship.
Ooh.
Even took his girlfriend to look at properties while secretly having almost nothing left in the bank.
Wow. Cameron's situation just shows how tangled up our money is with our relationships.
Right.
And the lengths we might go to avoid looking vulnerable or admitting we messed up financially. Letting his girlfriend think they were about to buy a place while he was actually looking into bankruptcy, that shows the immense pressure he felt to keep up that successful image in the relationship.
Yeah. Makes you wonder what happens when one person is hiding their financial reality like that.
The emotional weight of that kind of deception must be huge.
Totally. And it raises some tough questions about trust, doesn't it? Transparency in partnerships.
Definitely. Like, what would you do if your partner just never asked about your finances? And how long can love really last when one person is pretending they're okay financially?
Those questions really hit the core of trust and honesty, don't they?
Yeah. Cameron's unwillingness to reveal his problems, it ultimately led to a huge breach of trust. It shows how financial secrets can just eat away at the foundation of even, like, seemingly strong relationships.
Okay, finally in this section, there's Lila. She found herself constantly footing the bill for her partner. He seemed unable, or maybe unwilling, to contribute fairly. Started small parking tickets, groceries.
Let's look very slow.
Totally. Escalated to bigger things like paying off his Amazon card. She just kept giving and giving, maybe hoping to feel needed, secure in the relationship.
That happened.
But ultimately, it just bred resentment, and the relationship ended.
Lila's experience is such a powerful reminder about balance, right? Reciprocity in any healthy relationship, especially with money.
Absolutely.
Her willingness to give so much without getting much back, it points to that deep desire to feel valued, maybe secure.
Yeah.
But sadly, it ended up with her feeling used. It brings up that really poignant question. How much of yourself would you give away just to feel needed?
Yeah.
And what part of you is still angry you had to finally stop?
And when we look at Janelle, Cameron, and Lila, their situations were different, sure, but they all faced big life changes.
Right. Finding new ways to make money, going to therapy, dealing with the emotional fallout.
And when you think about average rents in a place like LA or sky-high credit card interest rates,
Yeah, context matters.
it underscores that these aren't just isolated stories. They reflect bigger economic pressures that can make these personal struggles even harder.
Exactly. It brings us back to those core questions. How many situations have we stayed in paying some kind of price just to avoid facing the exit?
Mm.
And when you finally do leave, what emotional baggage do you take with you?
Yeah. Some debts are financial. You see them on a statement.
But others, as these stories show, you pay with parts of yourself you don't get back, losses you don't report to Experian.
Losses you just carry silently.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this leads us into our final area today, the things we buy to feel loved.
Right. Let's start with Brian. He spent a lot of money on early dates with someone he really liked.
Trying to impress.
Totally. Racked up considerable debt. And ultimately, the relationship ended anyway, leaving him with the bills.
Brian's story is such a clear example of trying to buy affection, isn't it? That expensive first date, the gestures afterwards,
Right.
it all came from wanting to be wanted,
Yeah.
to build a connection.
Okay.
The disappointment when it didn't last, plus the debt. That's a painful reminder that, well, material things have limits when it comes to the heart.
Makes you wonder, what would someone buy just hoping to feel wanted?
And what would it take to admit it didn't work?
His story has those little details, too, like he's still paying for a streaming service his ex uses.
Oh, wow. See, emotional ties messing with practical financial stuff long after it's over.
Then we have Lena. She describes herself as having this tendency towards pathological caretaking, constantly helping family and friends financially, often hurting her own finances. This habit of giving, finding it hard to say no, it led to huge personal debt and feeling totally depleted.
Lena's story really highlights how deep those caretaking roles can run for some people.
Yeah.
Believing that love means always saying yes, always being the fixer. It can lead to massive financial strain and neglecting your own needs.
Mm-hmm. That moment when she couldn't afford a small drugstore purchase because she had no money, that really hit home for her.
Yeah, a wake-up call.
It forces us to think about the hidden financial burdens in our relationships.
Yeah, definitely. How much debt are we kind of unknowingly racking up in these dynamics?
And who taught us that being loved means constant self-sacrifice?
Good question. Finally, there's Eli, a musician who kept up a lifestyle way beyond his means.
Even after his online income dropped.
Yeah, this persistent need to project success, maybe to cover up feeling inadequate. It led to risky money behavior and serious legal trouble.
Eli's situation really shows powerfully how our insecurities can drive our financial choices, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That intense need to look like he was worth more than he was,
Yeah.
it reflected this deep fear of feeling worthless.
It leads to those tough questions like, in a crisis, would you rather lose your savings or lose face in front of others?
Right. Who are you really trying to impress just by scraping by?
Yeah. And when we look at Brian, Lena, and Eli reflecting back, there's a common theme, isn't there?
There is. Recognizing unhealthy patterns
Setting boundaries.
and starting that journey towards finding self-worth that isn't tied to what others think or how much money you have.
And again, thinking about the context, average Gen Z credit card debt, rising rents, easy access to buy now, pay later.
It's clear these individual struggles are happening within a larger economic system that can, feed into these tendencies.
And like Publius Syrus said again, debt is the slavery of the free.
It really prompts us to reflect, doesn't it?
Yeah. When was the last time you bought something mainly because it made you feel loved or valued?
And what might it take to actually cultivate that feeling from inside yourself without needing a receipt or external validation?
Because ultimately, not every hole we try to fill is financial, is it?
No, sometimes they start with loneliness or insecurity.
And end with a balanced due.
So what these different stories really shine a light on is that incredibly complex, often unspoken link between our money decisions and our basic human needs.
Yeah, for connection, validation, security.
Exactly.
And the key takeaways for you listening in really boil down to this. Financial problems, often signs of deeper emotional stuff going on.
And the pressures of modern life,
Yeah.
those curated realities we see everywhere, they can definitely amplify these tendencies.
And ultimately, true self-worth, real love. You just can't buy those things.
Nope, not on any platform.
So as you take some time to think about what we've talked through, Maybe consider those metaphorical rooms you might be trying to stay in.
Or the things you might be buying,
Yeah.
not just because you need them, but maybe driven by those deeper emotional reasons.
It might just be helpful to sit with these questions, maybe jot down a few thoughts.
Yeah.
And if any of these patterns feel familiar in your own life, please remember just acknowledging these things. Maybe seeking support. That's actually a sign of strength. Self-awareness.
Absolutely. Understanding these connections, these intricate links between our money and our emotions, it really is the first crucial step.
Towards making more mindful, healthier choices.
Exactly, both in our finances and in our relationships. You shared some really revealing accounts with us. Stories that kind of peel back the curtain on the modern workplace,
Yeah.
showing the real struggles people face, often silently.
Exactly. This isn't the polished version, is it? We're diving deep into those undercurrents, the sort of personal battles people are fighting every day. And these narratives you've gathered, they really reflect that.
Right. And our goal here isn't just to list off these experiences. We want to really get underneath them, understand what's going on.
Yeah, find those common threads, the pressures, but without making it, too overwhelming.
So let's start with Jasmine's story. Let's unpack that one first.
Okay, Jasmine. So she's a brand experience strategist, works remotely, making $78,000. On the surface, it sounds pretty good, right? Like a success story.
Totally.
But her experience, it really highlights this disconnect between how things look on the outside and what's actually happening inside.
Yeah, and those Slack messages. It's striking how, like you said, they seem routine, but the sources suggest they're almost like subtle cries for help.
Think about it. Things like, I think we should revisit the scope on this.
Yes,
Or,
the classic just looping back.
exactly. Or, let me know how you'd like to proceed. I mean, there's standard phrases. We all use them.
Right.
But in her context, you get this sense of someone just drowning, feeling overwhelmed, maybe even scared of falling behind.
And the emotional toll seems huge.
Yeah.
Feeling like she was drowning, those late nights, blurry Zooms, working on decks no one reads. It sounds like chronic stress, basically.
Definitely. And it wasn't just the workload itself, was it? There was more going on.
No, not at all. Like those strategy meetings turning into, well, therapy sessions for her boss.
Right, the boss crying about a breakup.
Yeah, and then complimenting Jasmine on being a good listener while Jasmine has muted the tab. It's just, wow. Talk about isolation and completely blurred lines.
It really paints a picture. And the physical side of it, too, that chest pain every Monday morning, 9.3 U sharp, that's powerful.
It's like her body was screaming, sounding an alarm.
Yeah. It speaks volumes about the dread, the anxiety, just anticipating the work week starting. It's a very clear sign of that psychological pressure hitting physically.
And then she just stopped turning her camera on eventually.
Yeah.
Like retreating, trying to become invisible maybe, create some distance.
It suggests that, a small buffer in a situation that felt way too demanding. And then there's that mention of the Discord server for burnout survivors.
Oh yeah, that was pretty grim.
It adds this layer of, bleak reality. These communities pop up for support, right? For people hitting the wall with work exhaustion.
But the inactive accounts, the struck through usernames.
Exactly. It maybe points to how hard it is to sustain even that virtual support when you're really deep in it. Or maybe people just need to step away completely to recover. It's sobering.
It really is. And that dream she had, her laptop just bursting into flames.
Such a visceral image, just wanting the source of the stress to literally disappear.
But then reality hits. The VP sends a ping, and what does she do?
Instant response. On it.
Yeah, on it. Followed by just staring at the screen until sunrise. It's such a stark picture of that relentless pressure, the always-on culture, even when you're running on empty.
Absolutely. The constant need to perform, to be responsive, especially without real team support, it leads to this profound isolation, feeling totally helpless. That's a key takeaway from her story, I think.
Definitely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about Paul.
Great, Paul. Property manager, $59,000 a year, and that bonus, non-existent.
So the money situation feels maybe more immediately tight for him.
Perhaps. But what really jumps out is his constant, unfiltered exposure to people's private lives. The messy parts.
Yeah, having keys to 42 apartments. I mean, he saw everything, didn't he? Fights, mold, that woman crying over designer bags, just raw, intimate stuff.
He was a silent witness, constantly, and that anecdote about the resident asking about the mail over and over, even when it had arrived.
And Paul just kept saying no. It's almost surreal. It hints at something deeper going on with that resident, maybe anxiety, that Paul just couldn't really engage with in his role.
Exactly. It highlights that invisible emotional labor, He's dealing with all this resident stuff, soaking up their anxieties, their frustrations.
But treated like wallpaper. His own feelings, his own presence, just overlooked.
Yeah, but he was observing. He absorbed everything. The details your sources mention are incredibly telling.
Oh, totally. Like the couple in 7A
Yeah.
splitting costs down to the last cent. That $3.42 Venmo for toilet paper, it paints such a vivid picture.
It really does. Or the woman in 3F, overly cheerful, tipping too much, asking if she looked tired. And Paul just says no. Seeking reassurance, maybe?
Seems like it. And the guy punching the wall in 5D, blaming settling issues.
And Paul ends up patching it himself. It's just
Oh, yeah.
these moments pile up. They show the sheer weight he was carrying, constantly bumping up against these little personal dramas.
And you see that shift in him, right? The source says he used to care.
Yeah, that detachment grows. It's like a defense mechanism, maybe. Born from just being exposed to so much struggle constantly. His line, "Every apartment is a stage for someone's unraveling, and every rent payment came with a little bit of blood." Wow.
It's incredibly powerful and really makes you think about the hidden costs for frontline workers.
Absolutely. That emotional tax, being privy to all that raw humanity, often without any real support or even acknowledgement for dealing with it.
Okay, so let's bring Amy into the conversation. She's in HR, the people and culture lead, making $91,000. Seems more like a standard corporate gig, but her story's also really complex.
Yeah, you see that duality straight away. The title suggests, people, culture, well-being.
Right.
But her actual tasks, terminations, compliance, trauma mop-up, as the source puts it, it's heavy stuff.
And there's that inherent conflict in HR, isn't there? It's often seen as neutral, maybe even pro-employee.
But Amy's reality seems different. That folder name, documentation, protect company, that says a lot.
It really does. It lays bare the tension. Wanting to help individuals versus the absolute mandate to protect the organization.
And the example with Mark, the designer reporting verbal abuse, that's pretty stark.
Yeah, Amy makes one follow-up call, files it as resolved. And 6 weeks later, Mark's laid off.
You can almost feel her conflict there, wanting to check in, maybe do more, but feeling constrained by the role, by the process.
And then rewriting the layoff memo, making things so softer, gentler, using corporate speak like sunsetting the role, citing new efficiencies.
It highlights how language gets used, doesn't it, to soften blows, maybe obscure the harder truths. And that question posed in the source, what would you trade to keep your paycheck? It hits hard.
It really makes you think about the compromises people feel forced into.
And her coping mechanisms, wow. Not sleeping, microdosing, joining a corporate dissociatives Telegram chat.
Crying in the shower, screaming into towels, then pasting on the cheerful Slack emojis. It's a powerful image of that internal split, that dissonance.
Totally. Fighting this huge internal battle while keeping up appearances. And then the therapist diagnosing moral injury.
Which is about distress from actions or inactions that violate your own ethics.
Exactly. But Amy's response, I have a mortgage. Just blunt economic reality crashing in.
It's stark. Her story really shows the intense pressure and the ethical tightrope people in those kinds of gatekeeping roles often walk, protecting the company versus personal values.
It's a huge source of conflict. So looking at all three, Jasmine, Paul, Amy, what connects them? What are the threads running through these different experiences?
Well, what stands out to me is how they each, in their own way, shine a light on those hidden struggles. Feeling swamped, feeling unheard or unseen.
Definitely. And that significant emotional burden that comes with the job, whether it's pressure, exposure to trauma, or ethical conflicts.
And those little moments of escape or maybe quiet rebellion. Jasmine in the park, Paul taking photos of cracked tiles, Amy drafting resignation letters she never sends.
Yeah, those are poignant moments. Glimpses of them needing some kind of respite, some acknowledgement of a reality beyond the job's demands.
They feel really significant.
Yeah.
And the theme of boundaries just dissolving. Work creeping into everything, one email at a time, as a source put it. That feels universal.
It really does. And the cost of trying to be the good one, the conscientious one, within systems that might be flawed or just inherently difficult.
Yeah, and that question, who protects the protectors? It really hits home with Amy in HR, but also with Paul dealing with all those residents.
Right. People in supporting or managing roles often don't have adequate support themselves. And culturally, we push career building success.
But we don't really talk about how to process the tough stuff, the grief or disappointment that comes with careers, too.
It's like it's not allowed. And that idea of dissociation as a coping strategy, the lowercase smiles, the feedback sandwiches.
Decorating wounds in Canva. That was such a striking phrase.
It really was. It speaks to creating that distance, managing the emotional impact by, well, by detaching, presenting a smooth surface while things are churning underneath.
And that final thought in that section. And somehow, we keep waking up, even when nothing inside us is awake. That just captures the grind, the necessity of carrying on, even when you're depleted.
It really does. It sums up that feeling of just having to function.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we've definitely touched on some really deep, important stuff about work today. We've looked at those hidden struggles, the emotional weight, how people cope, all through these very personal stories.
Yeah, these accounts are so valuable. They give us a window into realities that often stay hidden behind job titles and professional exteriors. It's a reminder of the complex inner lives people are navigating at work every single day.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
After hearing these stories, what subtle signs of strain might you notice now? Maybe in your own workplace or just in how you interact with people about their work? Definitely something to reflect on. Have you ever felt like you're, I don't know, putting on a performance at work day after day rather than just, doing the work?
Or maybe that feeling, that loyalty to your job, it starts to feel like it's costing you something, like pieces of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And let's be honest here, how much of our own sense of worth is sort of tangled up in that job title? Or, the praise from a performance review that fades pretty quickly.
Yeah. These are the kinds of tensions that so many of us deal with in our work lives, aren't they? It's not just about the tasks, the spreadsheets, whatever. It's the underlying emotional stuff, the financial pressures that often just come with the territory.
Right, and that's precisely where we're diving in today. We're kind of setting aside the usual, maybe surface-level career advice
Yeah.
and taking a much deeper look into these emotional and financial tightropes that, wow, it seems like so many people in the modern workforce are walking.
We've gathered a collection of stories, like interconnected threads, really, snapshots of individual struggles, observations on subtle workplace dynamics, and those internal battles that people don't often talk about out loud.
Think of it like a network of experiences, maybe.
Yeah.
Each story gives you a glimpse into one situation.
Right.
But when you put them together, you start seeing these broader patterns. You start to understand some of the maybe underlying forces at play.
Our goal, our mission with this deep dive, it's pretty straightforward, actually.
Yeah.
We want to offer you some real insights into these experiences because they are incredibly common. We hope to shed some light on why you or, people might be feeling this constant pressure.
And maybe spark a few of those aha moments
Yeah,
about the bigger systems shaping our work lives.
exactly.
Hopefully. Okay, let's get into it then. Let's unpack this, starting with Marcus and his very significant lanyard.
Marcus. Yeah, his situation is incredibly telling. The fact that he keeps wearing the senior analyst lanyard even after he's been demoted to analyst 2 without any real explanation, it just says so much. It really highlights how deeply our job titles can get woven into our sense of self-worth, doesn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
So even a seemingly small symbolic thing like a lanyard feels huge.
And the money aspect, too. His base salary is stuck at $84,500. Meanwhile, a former colleague, someone he knows, is now earning way more and has better work-life balance.
Yes, that contrast, it just underscores how arbitrary career progression and rewards can feel sometimes.
Definitely. Plus, you add in his living situation, that rent-stabilized place with water stains, the unreliable roommate.
Right.
It adds this layer of financial precarity.
Yeah, that pressure so many people feel alongside the pressure to perform at work.
And what about that detail about the Sunday night anxiety? How it shows up as a Slack notification sound.
Oh, yeah.
That physical reaction to a digital trigger, it really illustrates how deeply work can just seep into our personal lives, blurring those lines that should be there.
And his fear of leaving?
Yeah.
It's compounded by that unsettling story about Trevor from finance.
Right.
Just disappearing.
Yeah, labeled not a culture fit. Poof.
It creates this climate of anxiety, doesn't it? Like you shouldn't question things or look elsewhere.
And Marcus is bending over backwards trying to be this culture fit, whatever that means.
Right.
But he's still stuck. It makes you wonder, what are they actually valuing here?
It really does. And this whole idea of culture fit, it often seems less about genuine shared values and more about conformity. Like, don't rock the boat, even if the boat's kind of leaky.
Exactly. And that resignation drafts folder he has, that digital space holding all these escape plans he never acts on.
It speaks volumes about that internal conflict, right? Wanting change, but being terrified of the unknown.
Definitely. The act of actually folding one of those drafts, even without sending it, that feels like a significant moment, a private nod to that yearning for something else.
Absolutely. A small private acknowledgement. Okay, let's shift focus now to Dana, the manager of people and purpose, or as the source puts it, rather pointedly,
The emotional garbage collector.
yeah. That unofficial title, it cuts right to the chase, doesn't it?
It's stark, maybe a bit cynical, but it feels accurate for a role that sounds so positive and supportive on paper. You know, earning $93,200, but constantly mediating conflicts that blow up on social media, dealing with all the emotional fallout.
It highlights that invisible labor, doesn't it? The emotional labor that so many in HR or similar roles just have to do, often without any extra recognition or compensation.
And those HR mandated trainings piled on top of the constant emotional firefighting.
Oh, yeah.
The weighted blanket, the secret naps, these aren't just little quirks, they're coping mechanisms, clear signs someone's under a lot of strain.
And the aggressive period on Slack anecdote, it's almost darkly funny, but it's also such a telling sign of the heightened sensitivity and anxiety in workplace communication these days.
What's really insightful is Dana's background. She studied psychology, wanted to understand trauma theory,
Right.
but now she's navigating everyday workplace spats with, frankly, not much relevant training for that. So she uses therapy speak as a shield.
Like, I hear you, or let's process this.
Exactly. It's a way to create a bit of distance, to manage the constant flood of other people's emotions. And emotional labor, for anyone unfamiliar, is just that managing your own feelings and responding to others as part of the job, often unacknowledged.
And the contrast between what she's thinking internally, like, this isn't a safe space, it's a dying company with kombucha on tap.
Yeah,
And her professional responses, it's really striking. It shows that performative side of work again.
totally. And her boss saying she's good at absorbing people's emotions, framing it like a compliment, but totally missing the personal cost.
Which leads her to write down occupational codependency. That's a really interesting term. Like relying too much on work for your sense of purpose, even when it's harming you.
It points to a systemic issue, doesn't it? Expecting individuals to manage everyone else's emotional well-being without proper support, leading to their own burnout.
And the anonymous suggestion about the burnout prevention plan actually causing more burnout, followed by the snack budget cut.
It's almost satirical. It just highlights the disconnect between what companies say their values are and what they actually prioritize.
It really does feel like that sometimes. Okay, shifting gears slightly, let's talk about Lila and her approach. The source calls it quiet revenge. That sounds intriguing.
Layla's story, yeah, it offers a different kind of response. Instead of internalizing or confronting things head on, she channels her energy into building something separate, something for herself.
And that shift in her friendship with Aaron after Aaron got promoted. That's such a classic scenario, isn't it? How work stuff can strain personal connections.
Totally. Professional jealousy, different paths. It happens.
And those comments from Aaron. Maybe you just need to advocate more. Or that loaded remark about women of color not negotiating.
Yeah. They sound like advice, but they carry this undertone of judgment, these misplaced assumptions. So insidious.
But Lila's reaction is fascinating. She doesn't get drawn into the drama.
Nope. She redirects. That quiet revenge is her freelancing on nights and weekends, deliberately turning off Slack, blocking out mental health time in her calendar.
Small acts, but they're about reclaiming her time and energy, right?
Absolutely. And earning $850 in one weekend freelancing, that's tangible validation, completely separate from her day job.
And building that Notion dashboard with an exit plan tab. That's not just tracking money. It's actively planning a future where she has more control.
Getting the LLC, the business cards, concrete steps toward a new professional identity, one she's building herself.
And that little detail at the end, Aaron's porch light being off, it's subtle, but
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the hidden costs of Aaron's own success, maybe? The unseen impact of climbing that ladder?
yeah, it really leaves you thinking. Now, before we dive into more stories, the source material throws out some really thought-provoking questions. I think they tie into everything we've discussed so far.
Oh, absolutely. They cut right to the core, like the first one. Have you ever stayed too long in a friendship that started as support and ended as surveillance?
Wow, that hits close to the Lila and Aaron dynamic, doesn't it?
It really does.
Oh, so.
And then, what if quiet quitting wasn't laziness, but grief disguised as detachment?
That's like a powerful reframe. It shifts the perspective completely. Maybe it's not about being disengaged, but about dealing with disillusionment or burnout.
Precisely. And the last one, how much of your worth have you outsourced to performance reviews?
Oof.
Yeah. That one makes you really stop and think about where we get our validation from and how maybe fragile that can be when it's all external.
These are the kinds of questions that stick with you, you know?
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to Kareem, known as the dashboard guy, which, as the source notes, is probably not meant as a compliment. No, it's classic reductionism, isn't it? Defining him just by this one technical skill, manipulating data, and completely ignoring the deeper insights he has. He knew too much, right?
About Maya covering things up, Jeremy's ghost promotion, the signs of layoffs coming. That kind of knowledge must be a heavy burden.
For sure. And even though he's earning six figures, his financial struggles are real. The rent hike to $2,800 using Klarna and Afterpay for basics, therapy on Zoom.
It's a stark reminder of how the cost of living hits hard, even for people with supposedly good salaries. That quiet, whispered pain at the start of his therapy session. Really heartbreaking.
And his therapist calling him chronically emotionally undernourished. That's incredibly insightful. He's become this walking productivity hack.
Valued for output for just getting it done, but is anyone actually asking if he's okay?
Seems like no. And that question, have you ever been so competent it made you invisible? That resonates with so many people who feel their efforts are just expected, taken for granted.
It really does. And him tracking the like family mentions in meetings. Cynical maybe, but probably accurate. A gauge of the corporate BS, yeah. Updating his LinkedIn, then getting that tone-deaf recruiter message.
Yeah.
It highlights the gap between the polished professional world and the messy reality.
So he creates that empty reality folder, like a silent acknowledgement of the disconnect.
It's a space for the unvarnished truth, even if he can't say it out loud yet. A holding place for that growing disillusionment.
Okay, now let's look at Amanda from People Ops. Praised for being a great culture fit, having great emotional intelligence. But as we saw with Dana,
Those can be loaded terms, absolutely. In some places, great emotional intelligence basically means willing to absorb everyone else's discomfort without making waves.
right, earning $82,000, but expected to manage the emotional fallout with, like, emoji reactions and playlists. It highlights the performative nature of some HR roles.
And that folder of unsent exit letters, 7 of them.
Wow, that's a powerful image. Someone constantly on the edge of leaving, but held back by
Oh,
what? Fear? Obligation? And being the go-to person for everyone to vent to. Then timing how long it takes them to ask how she is after they've trauma dumped.
that's brutal. It just shows how one-sided that emotional labor can become.
The average time, 17 minutes. The record, over an hour. These aren't just numbers. They represent interactions where her well-being is clearly an afterthought.
And the question, what do you do when emotional labor is your whole personality? Devastating. It speaks to how your identity can get eroded by these demands.
Completely. So her sarcastic use of therapy phrases, that dark humor, it's a coping mechanism. Understandable, really.
And adding that question to the onboarding survey, what's one lie you tell yourself to survive capitalism? And pinning the one honest answer. That's a small act of defiance, isn't it?
A moment of raw truth in all the corporate speak. Her eventually just sending an exit letter and vanishing. It feels like the only possible endpoint after enduring all that.
A stark reminder that people have breaking points. Okay, let's turn to Zara now, the customer success manager with the secret side hustle.
Right. Earning $74,200, but moonlighting as a copywriter just to pay off her brother's hospital bill. That immediately flags the financial vulnerability many people face, even with professional jobs.
And the pressures of her main job, always apologizing for things that aren't her fault,
Yeah.
then getting flagged for defensiveness.
While juggling the exhaustion of the side hustle, it's a recipe for burnout.
Being passed over for promotion twice, with that vague feedback to speak up more when she's already running on empty. It's just cruel irony.
Her internal thought, I'm not quiet, I'm exhausted, I'm surviving, that lays it bare. The reality behind the professional mask.
And joining that Reddit forum for emotional debt, only to find it makes her feel worse.
Yeah, sometimes finding shared experience validates the struggle, but doesn't actually fix the root cause, It can be a double-edged sword.
That late night message asking how she stays balanced, right when she's checking her freelance balance, it just underscores her reliance on that side income financially and maybe emotionally too.
Possibly. A sense of accomplishment, maybe. Control. And her requesting a day off for personal sustainability using that specific language is a subtle but important way of asserting her needs.
And the new policy billing freelance clients for her time, that's a clear step towards valuing her own labor, something her main job isn't doing enough.
We're seeing these small shifts across these stories, aren't we? These little acts of rebellion or self-preservation.
Yeah. Marcus deleting Slack from his phone,
Mhm.
Dana using therapy phrases sarcastically, Kareem pulling back, not offering help anymore, Amanda's onboarding question, Zara setting boundaries with clients.
They might seem small, but they're significant. They represent individuals trying to claw back some agency, some control in environments that feel overwhelming.
And underneath all this, there are these unseen burdens,
Mm.
like Jenna in Portland. HR coordinator, $52,000 salary, high rent, juggling the job, and a graphic design side hustle.
And she sees the quiet quitting around her not as laziness, but as a symptom, exhaustion, disengagement.
Her documenting the toxic manager, the gaslighting, that's so important.
Yeah.
It shows the systemic issues and how hard it is for one person to fight them.
And the suspicion from her teammate Lisa about the side hustle, plus that previous salary leak, it just highlights the lack of trust, the potential for competition even among colleagues.
So Jenna seeks therapy, focusing on anxious attachment at work, and reads Dare to Lead. She's actively trying to understand and navigate these tough dynamics.
Then we pivot to another Marcus, the software engineer earning 95K but working from his mom's basement because rent is too high.
Right. Different Marcus. And he's dating Anna, a project manager at the same company.
And their relationship sounds complicated. Blurred boundaries, professional codependency, Anna checking his Slack status obsessively, showing up unannounced.
His therapist uses the term enmeshment, which sounds right. That lack of clear boundaries, losing your own autonomy.
Definitely. And Anna's hidden Etsy shop, Marcus buying her an iPad she doesn't even thank him for, it points to an uneven dynamic, maybe a lack of real support there.
Which kind of connects to Lisa and Sarah's situation, doesn't it? The financial sabotage, the resentment.
Yeah, Lisa, Jenna's teammate, 75K, living with Sarah, freelance VA. Lisa resents Sarah's freedom and income, leading to petty stuff like borrowing headphones.
And Sarah retaliates by leaking Lisa's salary. Trust completely broken.
Compounded by Lisa's narcissistic boss, no HR protection, burnout. She feels stuck even after checking salary sites.
These stories, tough as they are, they really do paint a picture of a shared experience, don't they?
Absolutely. That text exchange between Jenna and the first Marcus about always feeling like they're performing.
And his question, what else do we have? It's so raw, so vulnerable, probably resonates with a lot of people.
And Lisa thinking about when a career becomes your whole personality and the cost of just surviving these systems.
Yeah.
Heavy questions many people are grappling with silently.
But amidst all that struggle, we do see these small acts of agency starting to pop up.
Yes. Jenna reaching out to a labor rights group, joining a burnout recovery community.
The first Marcus, deleting Anna's number, tracking screen time, joining a remote worker meetup, reading Atomic Habits, taking steps.
And Lisa posting anonymous feedback, seeking counseling for workplace trauma, even taking a self-defense class, reclaiming personal power.
These little steps, they matter so much, don't they? Individuals trying to regain some control, some well-being in these really demanding environments.
Totally. And it all brings us to that really powerful quote from the source material.
Ah, yes. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets.
That quote is just crucial for understanding the bigger picture here. It forces you to ask, are these individual struggles just random incidents? Or are they the predictable results of the systems we work within?
Is the system broken? Or is it working exactly as intended, just at a huge cost to individuals?
Which leads to that really challenging follow-up question. What if the bravest thing you can do isn't just enduring it all? What if it's stopping the pretense that surviving this is somehow noble?
Right. It challenges that whole narrative, that grind culture idea that suffering for work is a badge of honor.
Maybe prioritizing your own well-being, setting those boundaries. Maybe that's the courageous path, the sustainable one.
And we end with those final, quiet snapshots. Jenna closing her laptop, Marcus turning off his phone, Lisa staring at the ceiling.
These private moments, they capture the unseen struggles beneath the surface, don't they? Echoing that Longfellow quote, "Every man has his secret sorrows which the world knows not."
Exactly. These are the moments after the performance when the mask comes off and the weight of it all settles in. A reminder of the real, often lonely battles people are fighting.
And we also get glimpses of others caught in similar webs. Emily, the junior analyst in Brooklyn dealing with high rent, a predatory coworker, and her own complex PTSD.
Asking herself, what do you do when the place you're supposed to thrive in feels like a battlefield?
Then Malik, the coffee shop owner struggling financially, driving DoorDash on the side. And his sister Yasmin in HR, swamped by hustle culture chatter, gossip about quiet quitting and burnout.
Even their family dinners feel strained by these unspoken money and work pressures.
And Jenna and Tom, different Jenna. This time, precarious careers, hidden finances, Tom's obsessive productivity, Jenna finding him checking her phone.
Raising that awful question, what do you risk just to keep the peace? Especially in your closest relationships when outside pressures are so high.
These extra stories just reinforce how widespread these issues are across industries, relationships. That tension between money and well-being is everywhere.
But even here, we see those little seeds of change. People seeking support.
Yeah, Emily finding resources on Fairy Godboss, attending a webinar on workplace rights.
Malik and Yasmin starting to talk openly about financial literacy.
And Jenna considering couples therapy to tackle the financial codependency and trust issues with Tom.
Small steps, but they highlight the importance of seeking resources, starting those tough conversations, even when it feels daunting.
Which brings us back to these final, really powerful questions for you, the listener. We want you to think about this. What happens when your job inadvertently becomes the stage where all your deepest insecurities are constantly performing?
And how do you even begin to rebuild trust in your relationships when financial pressures and differing ambitions start to tear at the very seams?
And finally, perhaps the most relatable for many, have you ever found yourself just pretending that everything is perfectly fine, simply to avoid dealing with the potential fallout if you were to admit the truth?
These questions really wrap up the core themes, don't they? Pushing us to look at the facades we maintain or see others maintaining, and we're left with that final image. People in their private spaces, office lights off, but the tension, the anxiety, still there.
So yeah, in this deep dive, we've really tried to explore these interconnected stories, bring to light some of those hidden challenges, the different ways people cope in today's work world.
We genuinely hope this exploration has, resonated with some of your own experiences or maybe given you a fresh perspective on what people around you might be going through.
And maybe think about this. What's one small, concrete step you might be able to take? Could be setting a boundary, having an honest conversation, looking up a resource. Something to address these themes in your own life or workplace.
What does real, sustainable well-being actually look like beyond the often crazy demands of the current system?
This is really just scratching the surface, the beginning of a deeper understanding.
Definitely. We encourage you to keep thinking about the systems at play in your own life and what meaningful change could look like, both for you, individually, and maybe for the wider communities you're part of.